Hi, welcome back to Frank's Vinyl Review. This week I've decided that we're going to review this gem from Lee Morgan, and this is called Search for the New Land. This was released just recently on Blue Note, their classic vinyl series. I first heard this record, I want to say almost 10 years ago, when it was released on the Blue Note 75 series. So this is a pretty significant upgrade to that particular version. This version, this record sounded really good. The quality, the pressing was very good. I did read some reviews on Discogs. Some folks got some copies that had some skips and other quality issues. But I was lucky in that I had no issues with my copy, and I'm very excited to add this to both my Lee Morgan collection and my jazz collection. This is one of Lee's great albums, and arguably one of his more famous albums. And if you're a Lee Morgan fan like I am, you know about this record. It's a great record. So I want to jump right into it. So this record was recorded with five other musicians. So including Lee, it's a sextet, so 6 players. And I want to cover the lineup with you. So we have Lee Morgan on trumpet, Wayne Shorter on tenor saxophone, Grant Green on guitar, Herbie Hancock on the piano, Reginald or Reggie Workman on bass, and Billy Higgins on drums. Billy Higgins played so amazing on this album. I mean, you know, you listen to a record and you think, you know, yeah, it's a Lee Morgan record. But as I was listening and taking notes, I mean, Billy Higgins his drumming just kept coming out at me, you know, there were a lot of polyrhythms, and just, you know, his cymbals were very dramatic. And so, you know, he was my MVP. Billy Higgins definitely was the MVP on this one. So let's jump right into it. So the record opens with the title track, Search for the New Land. And there's some, you know, essentially there's unison horns by Lee and Wayne Shorter to open. You can hear Billy Higgins on the cymbals, and there's this sort of mellow trill by Grant Green, and it has this sort of mysterious opening, if you will. Reggie Workman, he states the theme, and it's essentially a 2-chord vamp. Really nice accents by Herbie. Lee and Wayne, again, they're playing this nice theme, and the music sort of mellows again. And there is this sort of emphasis on atmospherics, if you will. And then there's sort of a trill, and then we hear Reggie come back, and he's stating that theme with Billy. And then Wayne takes the first solo. Wayne's very patient with his solo. He plays some very nice lines. Again, Billy's right there, and Wayne is so fluid. He's got such a nice range on his horn. You know, it's obvious why Lee wanted Wayne on this record. You know, we get back into that Search for the New Land, and you're gonna hear me I'm just gonna call it atmospherics, because, you know, we're gonna hear this 2-chord vamp, and then the music sort of mellows out, and then Wayne solos in this sort of atmospheric space, and then Lee comes in next. Lee solos next, and he's got some pretty high notes. Herbie's very active underneath Lee at this point. There's some nice sustain by Lee, really a nice mix of notes and tones, and he plays in that sort of atmospheric space, if you will. Workman signals a return. Again, Higgins is right there, and then we hear Grant Green on the guitar, and we hear a really nice solo by him. Nothing too flashy, you know, just he's got some great economy of sound, and everyone just sounds so on point. This is again the title track. And we hear more of that, you know, the sort of atmospherics, if you will. And Green, he's improvising in that atmospheric space. And we hear more Workman and Higgins. And then we hear Herbie. Herbie takes the reins on his solo. And I love, and again, this is where I really was hearing Higgins doing some really nice things. When Herbie was soloing, you could hear Higgins just doing some really nice stuff underneath. Corby, nice cordial work by Herbie, and again this idea of the polyrhythmic Higgins, because he's just playing some really nice stuff. More nice touches by Herbie, and then Lee and Wayne reunite with the Search theme, if you will, and then we close with more dramatic cymbals by Higgins, and then Lee and Wayne continue to harmonize with final blows as the tune ends, and it's just an excellent song. Going right into the next song on side one, this one's called "The Joker." We hear another unison opening between Lee and Wayne, and it's kind of an interesting line, right? Wayne, he solos first, very playful opening. Wayne's very patient, and then he's followed quickly by Lee Morgan. Workman and Higgins sound great here, and then Herbie takes his solo. Lee and Green chime in a little bit before leaving Herbie, and it's just, again, we hear the trio of Herbie, Workman, and Higgins, and then there's more unison lines by Lee and Wayne, and then they all leap forward for the outro. So that was kind of an interesting song. Over to side two. Side two opens with a song called, the name of the song is Mr. Kenyatta. There's a nice high energy opening. And again, as we've heard on side one, Wayne and Lee again playing you some unison lines. This time Lee solos first, and he's got some great accompaniment underneath. Really nice tones by Lee in his solo. And again, more great drumming by Higgins. Wayne comes in second, and he's got some really nice angular lines. Herbie's playing more aggressively underneath Wayne, as is Higgins, Grant Green comes in next, and he's playing some very clean, very precise lines. I could hear some legato lines in there by Green. And then Lee and Wayne join in, and there's some really nice three-part harmony before Green continues his solo alone. Herbie solos again, and again, Billy Higgins again is just killing it on the drums. And you can hear Grant Green comping nicely under Herbie. And then Lee comes in with a higher register solo. He's playing higher notes than he had been previously. Again, nice accents by Higgins. And then there's a nice unison line, reprise if you will. And then really nice outro touches by all, as you can hear the tracks starting to fade out. But I was really impressed by this one. I liked it. It was sort of a high energy number, and I really enjoyed that. Probably my favorite track on the album, Mr. Kenyatta. The next song on side two is called Melancholee, and it's got two E's, two L-E-E's, obviously a pun on Lee. As you'd expect, this was the only ballad on the album. Another strong unison opening. This one obviously is a little bit quieter and slower, as the title implies. And to me, at times, it kind of reminded me of a Mingus song in some of his ballads. Grant Green, he takes the first solo, and he's just playing some very nice simple lines. Herbie's got some nice touches underneath. Reggie Workman is playing some very simple yet effective bass. And then we hear Lee, he takes his solo, and he's got some nice touches. Wayne comes in after Lee, and just some really beautiful touches by Wayne here. And then Grant comes in, and again, he paints some very, very nice lines as well. Everyone's playing very beautiful on this one. And then I heard Higgins again with some nice cymbals as they close. And then the third song on the album, on side two, the last song on the album, is called Morgan the Pirate. And again, we hear more unison lines by Lee and Wayne. Lee takes the first solo, and again, it's just, as I've stated this review, Billy Higgins is just sticking out underneath. Lee's the swashbuckling trumpeter here, and really nice touches by Lee. Again, these you get this polyrhythmic feels from Higgins. Grant Green, he comes in next, and there's some nice rhythmic hookup with Green and Higgins as he continues his solo. Wayne comes in next, and he's got some pretty rapid lines on his solo. Herbie comes in next, and he's very playful, and there's really a nice feel on this song with tempo and melody. Again, nice accents by Higgins. and he's been killing it on this whole record, and then the track sort of fades out. So I just wanted to reiterate how amazing Billy Higgins played on this record. I mean, it's a Lee Morgan record. You know, he's got a great band. It's essentially a Blue Note all-star band. But Billy Higgins, I feel, he plays so well on this album. And played on subsequent Lee records as well. Obviously, he made a big impression on Lee, and rightfully so. I mean, he's just, for you jazz drummers out there, I highly recommend this record. You will hear some amazing drumming by Billy Higgins, and I feel like he steals the show with this record. I want to talk a little bit about Lee Morgan as a trumpet player. There was a movie that just came out a couple years ago on Netflix called I Called Him Morgan, and the title is derived from Lee's girlfriend Helen, who essentially had Lee, you know, long story short, Lee had succumbed to some heroin addiction, and his girlfriend, this woman, her name was Helen, essentially helped Lee come out of his addiction. You know, she helped bring him back, and you know, was a catalyst in him getting off junk and being able to play great music again. And so that documentary, I Called Him Morgan, essentially, she was interviewed by someone before she passed, and you know, talks about her history with Lee. It's a fascinating documentary about Lee Morgan. It's a fascinating story about their love affair, if you will, because she literally helped Lee get back on track. It ends in tragedy. If you're a fan of Lee Morgan, you know how his life ends. He ultimately ends up getting killed by Helen, and it's sort of a strange twist of fate. But it's still a very interesting and beautiful story, and one I highly recommend if you're a fan of jazz music and just music in general. I think you'll love the documentary I Called Him Morgan. It's a very very well produced, very well researched, so I highly recommend it. And so getting back to this record, the documentary I Called Him Morgan, the title track Search for the New Land, you know, opens that documentary, and at various points throughout the documentary we hear the music from Search for the New Land, the title track here. Just sort of underscores how important this record was in the life of Lee Morgan. So I highly recommend both this record as well as the documentary I Called Him Lee Morgan. This again was part of the Blue Notes Classic Vinyl series, just released a week or two ago. It's very readily available online or at your favorite local record store. I'd recommend going, if you have an opportunity, buy it at your store. But again, highly recommend it, and it's a great record, great listening. It's one that you'll be able to listen to over and over. It's just a fabulous piece of music. So that wraps it up for this week. Thanks, guys. Kind of a shorter review this week, but that's all I pretty much wanted to say about Lee and this record. And so thanks for tuning in, and look forward to seeing you guys next time. Okay, thanks. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.